back up to the Vinyl Attic. We're here. We're doing our count through of the 100 albums that should be in your collection, the 100 albums that I think matter. And we're finally going to talk about Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814. Comes out in November of 1989. There's been a bit of a delay. I bought this record right when it came out and played the hell out of it and continued to play the hell out of it. And I pulled it out of my collection to take it downstairs to play, and then I put it back, and I couldn't find where I put it back. I misfiled it somewhere in this room that has thousands of albums all around it, and I was having a panic attack. Where's my damn Janet Jackson album? And there's a new version of it, a new pressing on high grade vinyl. Probably has some bonus tracks, and it goes for $40 to $50. But I wanted the original, so I went to my favorite place to buy records at the last minute, eBay, and found a copy for $15. Now I have 2 copies of Rhythm Nation in this room. So I want to talk about this record because it's really important. It's her follow-up to her 1986 album Control, which had a bunch of big MTV hits, Nasty and What Have You Done For Me Lately, which was one of my favorites, choreographed by Paula Abdul. There's Paula Abdul right there. From her 1989 album, and just dominated MTV. And of course, the mid-'80s, everything, everywhere, all over the place is all Michael Jackson, right? Thriller comes out at the end of 1982, and then Michael Jackson kind of dominates everything in the 1980s. And so Janet has this huge success with the Control album, and her record company said, we need Control Part 2. We need another record like that that's dancey and poppy and sassy and nasty. And she said, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. There's something going on in the world. In the late 80s, we were seeing the rise of the crime rate. We were seeing gang violence and crack epidemics. We were seeing things like mass shootings. We had the Stockton shooting in California where a white supremacist went to a schoolyard and opened fire, killed 5 kids and injured something like 30 others. All this was brand new. This has never really happened before. This sort of random gun violence, shooting kids. I mean, now, sadly, it's kind of common. We just had another school shooting in Georgia, and it just sort of becomes background noise. It's also the end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall comes down not long after this record comes out, and there's something happening. And Janet says, I want to create a concept album that is a statement of this moment in history that we're in. And if you think about that, the past that's been done, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, 1971, was a great sort of snapshot of where the world was in 1971. But it really never came from a female voice, especially a black woman's voice. So she said, screw you, record label, Warner Brothers. I'm going to do this the way I want to do it, and I want to create something that I want to create. I want to be in control of the process. And this is the stuff that now we sort of expect from people like Taylor Swift. The way that Taylor Swift has gone back and re-recorded her back catalog because she wants to put it out on her terms. In a way, Janet is the proto-Taylor, and kind of taking over. And she's got a little bit of clout. Like her brother's Michael Jackson. She's just had this massive hit record. She's got a little bit of juice that she can use. And so she gets together with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, these 2 great music producers, in their studio in Minneapolis, which is the home of Prince, who also was huge at this period of time. I mean, this is all in the wake of Purple Rain. And so the hunkers down in the studio, not with musicians, just doing this all on synthesizer for the most part, write songs, is writing with the producers, writing by herself. Some of the songs are written by the producers and arranged by her, and constructs this story. And the idea of this album is the first side is the social commentary side. What's going on? What's the state of the world today? What's happening with mass shootings and gun violence and gangs and crack and all that? And then the second side, as to bring the sort of the more optimistic piece of the story, is sort of the more romantic love songs and kind of the R&B vibe. But the first side is sort of hits you with like, this is what's happening in the world. And the second side is like, love is going to get us out of it. So there is this arc of the story that's being told that creates something that had never existed before. It comes out at the end of 1989 and breaks all kinds of records. It's massive. It has, of the 8 singles, 7 of them hit the top 5. That had never happened before off one album. It had songs that were number ones in 3 different years. She hit number 1 in 1989, a couple number ones in 1990, and then one more number 1 in 1991. That had never happened before. And there is this element to it that is also becomes expected, which is the music videos. And the music videos are stark and dramatic and are hard hitting. And one of the ways that she got these videos out, instead of dropping videos for individual songs, she created a 30-minute movie of the Rhythm Nation story about these kids that are in this sort of crime-infested environment, and she's there. She runs a club, and they're singing and dancing, and then sort of all comes together in the title track, Rhythm Nation, that is very stark. I'll include the link, because you can see the whole thing on YouTube, of course. So if you haven't seen the whole Rhythm Nation little mini film, it's really powerful. And you'll notice something, which is it's all in the sort of black and white matte tone. And there was a real purpose behind that, which was everything in black and white sort of erases people's race. When you're watching a black and white film, might be able to guess what somebody's racial identity, but if you didn't know Janet Jackson and saw this picture, you might not know what her ethnic or racial background is. I mean, we know that she's a Jackson, so I'm not going to make any jokes about Michael there. But everybody's a shade of gray. She wanted this to erase race and create something that was beyond race. In fact, when she was putting out this record, she wanted to create something called the Rhythm Nation, or she's going to create this conceptual nation. And, just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about John Lennon's Mind Games album and his idea of Newtopia in 1973, the conceptual nation of Newtopia, where everybody's peaceful and nobody owns any property. And, it was just this idea, this thought game that John Lennon was doing. This is her version of Newtopia. In fact, on the press release, when the press release came out, she said this: "We are a nation with no geographic boundaries, bound together through our beliefs. We are like-minded individuals sharing a common vision, pushing toward a world rid of color lines." Right, that's what you see when you see the Rhythm Nation video, and the dancing in it, of course, is just insane. It was she wasn't a choreographer, but she choreographed it. Is that the right word? With Anthony Jackson, who after his work with Janet Jackson became sort of the dominant choreographer of the 1990s and 2000s. I mean, this was really launched him, and it is. It's pretty intense. In fact, there's one scene in the middle where she actually just passed out from exhaustion because when they were filming it, they were working so hard on these dance numbers that she just blacked out. I mean, it's just that intense. She said when she was putting it together that she was really inspired by people like Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and U2, who was really dominating the 80s and being more and more topical, talking about things like apartheid in South Africa and poverty and racism. She wanted something that would take that message to a younger audience. It would be sort of a more appealing wrapper for the young kids. And it really mixes together a lot of styles. It's got hip-hop, it's got soul, it's got New Jack Swing, it's got a little bit of jazz. There was even some industrial music in there that just sort of the hard-hitting. I mean, I love the title track Rhythm Nation because as soon as I heard it, I knew what the sample was from, which was Sly and the Family Stone, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again. They just sort of put it through some type of filter to turn it into this really industrial, gun, gun, gun. And it just brings it into this sort of industrial wasteland dystopian future. But what she was really talking about was happening in the world. The record was massive. It had number ones. It stayed on top of the charts. It won all kinds of awards. And, her record company were then shamefaced. Like, oh, I guess we should listen to, what this little girl wanted to do instead of putting her off as this little girl and recognizing she was this woman in power. Also at this time, speaking of, this was sort of the rise of black feminism. This is the time of Patricia Hill Collins and Bell Hooks, writers like Toni Morrison. And the idea was that the feminist voice was largely the voice of white middle-class women about the issues of white women. And there was a recognition, this is the beginning in the discussion about intersectionality, that black women's experience as women who are also black is going to be different than the experience of white women. And they needed the opportunity to express their experience with patriarchy and power structures. And Janet Jackson going up against the male-dominated record company, mostly white male-dominated record company, said, this is going to be my statement. This is going to be my statement. The impact of this record is long. It really influences everything into the first century, including Lady Gaga and The Weeknd, and so much stuff is influenced by this record. The dance style in music videos post Rhythm Nation 1814 was really kind of rooted in what was done in the videos for this record, and it just changes everything. The look of videos changes. The sound of black music is transformed. You know, you have the sort of new jack swing and the neo soul stuff, and you know, everything that starts to come out in the 1990s has a kernel of Genesis in this brilliant record that comes out at the end of 1989. And it's really summed up in the opening lines of the title track, where she really wants to create this alternative voice of what's happening in the world, where she says, "With music by our side to break the color lines, let's work together to improve our way of life. Join voices in protest to social injustice. A generation full of courage. Come forth with me." All right, Janet, I'll go wherever you're going. It really, really makes a huge impact. Janet is still there, still making great music and touring and, you know, occasionally releasing things. And this is a real turning point as we're talking about it. So I wanted to spend some time talking about this record. I love it. I love it. I couldn't stand not knowing where it was in this room, so I had to go to eBay. I bid on 3 versions before I finally won one that could be delivered to the vinyl addict. Okay, that's it for Janet. We are going to next talk about a record from a band that really transformed my life for a big chunk of time in the late 70s and early 80s, a band called The Jam. We're going to talk about The Jam's 3rd album, All Mod Cons, from 1978. Boy, do I have a lot to say about that record. I hope you'll join us for that discussion on Vinyl Fetish. In the meantime, Janet, you matter. Oh my God, you matter. How many people fell in love with her or were inspired by her or danced to her or had her as the soundtrack of their life back in the day. This album matters so much. Jeez Louise, I had to talk about it because this record is so important. And of course, you matter, so let's talk about it.